I used to think the safest career move was to become invisible in the right way. Not lazy, not careless, just uncontroversial. The person who never caused problems. The person who didn't ask for much. The person who could be relied on to take whatever was handed to them and keep smiling. Later that week, I kept replaying the director's question in my head, not because it was brilliant, but because it exposed something. Marcus had improved plenty. He just hadn't made it speak. And the truth is, work that doesn't speak gets interpreted by whoever is holding the pen in the moment. That's not cruel. It's just how fast decisions happen when a company is under pressure. Then I watched a man do it perfectly, and I realized safe can be the most fragile strategy in the room. His name was Marcus. He had a quiet face, the kind that always looked like it was listening. Same seat every day, same early arrival, same steady pace. People trusted him without thinking about it, which is another way of saying they stopped noticing him. The day it changed was a Tuesday morning, gray outside, fluorescent lights already buzzing like they were annoyed we'd shown up. A new director was visiting. We were pulled into a conference room with glass walls. You could see the city through it, and you could see yourself in the reflection, which made everyone sit a little straighter. The director walked fast. He asked questions like he was collecting evidence. He went around the table and asked, "What have you improved this quarter?" People gave the usual answers. A workflow, a customer issue resolved, a tool someone built. Then he looked at Marcus. Marcus clasped his hands and said, "Just keeping things steady." The director nodded, wrote one line, and moved on. After the meeting, I caught Marcus near the coffee machine and said, "You should have mentioned the reporting mess you fixed. You saved all of us." He shrugged like it wasn't worth mentioning. "I don't like attention," he said. "Attention creates problems." He believed that, and the company had trained him to. A month later, we were reorganized. That's the gentle word for it. New boxes on an org chart, new priorities, a short list of essential roles. Marcus wasn't on it, not because he was bad, because he was easy to overlook. I saw him in the parking lot with a cardboard box, moving slowly, as if speed would make it feel more final. He kept saying, "It's fine," and I could tell he didn't believe himself. The most painful part wasn't only the job. It was the realization that years of steady work couldn't be summarized by anyone else in the building. That's when it clicked for me. When decisions get made quickly, people keep what they can clearly name. If your contribution can't be named, it can't be defended. Playing it safe doesn't always reduce risk. Sometimes it just delays it until it arrives bigger, faster, and with less warning than you ever planned for. Most people choose safe for a reason. It's not weakness. It's training. Somewhere along the line, you learn that speaking up has consequences. In school, the kid who asks too many questions gets labeled difficult. In families, the kid who pushes back gets told to be grateful. So you walk into adulthood with a quiet rule. Keep your head down, and you'll be left alone. One of the hardest parts is admitting that being easy can become a form of self-protection that backfires. You try to avoid tension, but you end up carrying it anyway, just privately. And private tension becomes fatigue. If you've been tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, it's often because you keep swallowing things you should be naming calmly while they're still small. Work rewards that at first. I remember my first supervisor giving me what he thought was advice. We were standing in a hallway, the kind that smells like copier toner and stale carpet. He said, "You'll do well here if you stay easy to work with." He said it kindly, like he was handing me a map. I believed him. I became the person who answered emails quickly, who never said no directly, who accepted last-minute changes with a polite, tight smile. People describe me with flattering words: dependable, flexible, steady. What nobody said out loud was what those words can mean inside an organization. Adjustable. There was a Friday afternoon meeting that exposed it. The room was tired. Everyone wanted to be home. A project had slipped, and leadership wanted a new plan by Monday. No extra people, no extra budget. Just a new expectation dropped on the table like a weight. I watched the team do the silent math. If someone objected, they might look negative. If someone questioned the timeline, they might look difficult. So we nodded. We accepted a schedule we knew would steal our weekend. Walking back to our desks, a coworker muttered, "This is ridiculous," and then straightened his face as soon as he saw someone from management. That's the bargain of playing it safe. You tell the truth only in hallways. You protect your image in rooms where decisions are made. Over time, your silence becomes your reputation, and then the day comes when you actually need to advocate for a boundary, for a raise, for your team, for yourself. You discover you've spent years practicing avoidance. Your voice isn't gone, but it's out of shape. I'm not proud of how much of my life I spent trying to be low maintenance. I thought it made me professional. What it really made me was predictable. People learned they could borrow my time without asking twice. Safety built on approval is fragile. Approval disappears the moment the numbers tighten, or the personalities change, or the new leader simply doesn't care who you used to be. That's why easy is not a plan. It's a temporary truce. If you want a simple place to start, don't start with confrontation. Start with clarity. Replace silent agreement with one honest sentence. I can do that, but it will push this other thing. The point isn't to become difficult. The point is to stop being automatic. When you're always agreeable, the company never has to think about the real cost of your work. They just spend your time like it's free. Clarity is how you quietly take your time back. It's how you stay cooperative without becoming invisible. The risk of playing it safe isn't only losing a job, it's losing ownership of your own growth. It shows up in small moments first, the ones that seem too minor to matter. The meeting where you had an idea but didn't share it. The project you could have led but let someone else take. The credit you didn't claim because you didn't want to look like you needed it. What surprised me was how quickly regret turns into a pattern. You tell yourself, "Next time I'll speak," and then the next time arrives and your body remembers the old rule. Stay safe, stay quiet. That's why the goal is practice, not personality. You rehearse truth the way you rehearse any skill, small, consistent, and in the open, until it stops feeling like danger. I missed one of those moments in a way I still remember. I had an idea that would have fixed a daily problem on our team. Nothing glamorous. The kind of improvement that saves hours quietly. The kind that makes life smoother without anyone throwing a party. I wrote it down at home, late at night, laptop balanced on the edge of the kitchen table. I gathered a couple examples so it wouldn't sound like an opinion. I even rehearsed how I'd say it. Calm, brief, helpful. The next morning I sat in my car in the parking lot and stared at the building. I could already picture the meeting, a few senior people talking fast, someone making a joke, someone saying, "Scope?" I felt the familiar instinct to wait for a better time, so I told myself I'd bring it up later when things were calmer. Later didn't come. A few weeks after that, a consultant visited. New suit, confident voice, the kind of presence that makes managers lean forward. In a meeting, he pitched a solution, and I felt my stomach tighten. It was my idea. Not identical, but close enough that I could see the outline. The room reacted like the idea had been born in that moment. Questions, excitement, praise. People said, "Why haven't we done this sooner?" Afterward, I went back to my desk and opened my old notes. Same logic, same benefit. The difference was I hadn't attached my name to it. I hadn't taken the small risk of speaking when it mattered. That day taught me a practical rule. If you solve problems privately, you'll be treated like support. If you solve problems in a way others can see and repeat, you'll be treated like leadership. Visibility isn't chest thumping. It's making your work shareable, writing the note, presenting the fix, sending the summary, connecting the improvement to an outcome so it can't float away. Playing it safe trains you to wait for permission. But permission rarely arrives on schedule. Opportunities tend to go to the people who show up early with a clear point of view, even if their point of view isn't perfect. If you want a safer career, build a trail of outcomes that can survive a leadership change. Make it possible for someone else to describe your value without pausing to think. I remember walking out of that consultant meeting and feeling embarrassed by how quiet I had been, not because anyone shamed me, but because I could see my own pattern clearly. I waited for the right moment, and the moment went to someone else. On the drive home, I thought about how many times I'd done the same thing in smaller ways. Editing an email until it said nothing, letting a flawed plan move forward because I didn't want tension, convincing myself that being agreeable was the same as being wise. It isn't. It's often just fear wearing a respectable coat. That's what protects you when the room forgets faces and starts scanning for results. Some people hear this and assume the answer is to become louder. That's not it. Loud can be empty. The real protection is clarity. I saw the difference during a restructuring meeting that felt like a slow storm. There's a quiet relief in having that record too. When you can point to what changed because of your work, you stop feeling like you have to win people over with personality. You don't have to perform. You just have to be accurate. In the long run, accuracy is easier to defend than charm, especially when leadership is new and memory is short. Leadership asked each team to document impact. That phrase sounds reasonable until you realize what it's really for. Deciding what stays when the numbers don't work anymore. People submitted long lists of tasks, emails sent, meetings attended, tickets closed, hours worked. It was all motion, but it was hard to see the results. Then a quiet analyst sent a one-page summary, 3 changes she had made, what each one reduced, errors, turnaround time, customer complaints, short, plain, undeniable. When her name came up, nobody debated it. "We need her," someone said, like it was obvious. A man on my side of the room, helpful, kind, always available, didn't have that kind of record. He had always tried to be agreeable. He never pushed for ownership. He didn't want conflict. He didn't want attention. When leadership asked, "What do we lose if he's gone?" the answers were soft. "He supports us. He's dependable. He helps. Those are good things to be as a person. In a budget meeting, they can sound like background noise. This is the part that hurts. Companies don't protect effort. They protect outcomes. And prevention doesn't sparkle. If you catch a problem before it becomes a problem, nothing happens. If you do it well, nobody even knows you did it. That's noble work, but it's also easy to erase. After that meeting, I changed one habit. After finishing a piece of work, I'd write a short, plain summary and send it to the people it helped. Not look at me, just here's what changed, and here's what it prevents. 2 sentences, a paper trail, something that didn't rely on memory. Clarity is not ego. Clarity is communication. It's giving your future self something to stand on when the company starts speaking in numbers and you're trying not to take it personally. The people who survive change aren't always the ones who work the hardest. They're the ones whose value is easiest to explain when time is short. Being nice is not a weakness, but being invisible is. The goal is to be the calm person whose impact is easy to point to when the room starts asking hard questions. I used to think impact spoke for itself. It doesn't. Impact whispers unless you give it words. If you're the person who prevents fires, you have to translate "nothing happened" into "here's what would have happened." If you're the person who keeps the machine running, you have to explain what you fixed before it broke. That's not ego. That's survival in a system that forgets quickly. If you want a practical habit, keep a running list for yourself, not a brag sheet. A record, 3 lines a week. What you finished, what you improved, what you prevented. When the review comes or the reorg comes, you won't be searching your memory under stress. Segment 5, words, 599. Characters, 3,300. Playing it safe also has a quieter cost. It can make you smaller on the inside. When you swallow your opinions long enough, you start doubting you're allowed to have them. You still think. You still notice. You just keep editing yourself until your honest voice starts to feel like a liability. If you've ever left a meeting and felt angry at yourself more than anyone else, you already know this feeling. It's not that you wanted to argue. You wanted to be honest and didn't let yourself. Over time, that gap between what you know and what you say creates a low-grade shame, and shame makes you quieter. Clarity breaks that cycle. I noticed it in meetings first. A plan would be obviously unrealistic. A deadline would ignore reality. A leader would say something that didn't match what the team was living. I'd feel a small alarm in my chest, and then my mind would hurry to cover it with excuses. Not worth it. Someone else will say it. Pick your battles. So I stayed quiet. After the meeting, I'd send a careful email with softened language or tell myself I was being diplomatic. But what I was really doing was practicing disappearance. The first time I spoke up, after a long stretch of silence, my voice sounded too loud to my own ears. Nobody reacted the way I feared. A few people even looked relieved. Most rooms have more silent agreement than you think. I watched a coworker learn this too late. He had been overlooked twice for a promotion he deserved. He finally scheduled a meeting with our director, hands clasped like he was trying not to shake. He said, "I just want to know if there's anything I can do." It sounded humble. It was also powerless. He didn't say what he had delivered. He didn't name the role he was ready for. He didn't ask for a decision. He asked for approval. That's what playing it safe teaches. Wait to be chosen. And waiting quietly doesn't make you safer. It makes you dependent on other people being fair. And fairness is not guaranteed. I eventually learned that you can be respectful and still be direct. You can say, "I don't think that's accurate," without insulting anyone. You can ask, "What data are we using?" without sounding combative. When you stop treating honesty like a personality flaw, your confidence comes back in small pieces. That confidence isn't loud, it's steady. A stable career requires a stable self. If you keep shrinking to fit, you may stay employed, but you'll lose the part of you that makes you resilient when life forces change. One thing that surprised me was how much of my professionalism was really a fear of being disliked. I didn't want to look demanding. I didn't want to be the person who made things awkward. So I chose silence and called it maturity. But awkwardness is often just the first feeling of honesty. When you start speaking in a calm way, you realize most people aren't offended. They're grateful someone finally named what everyone was thinking. And the people who do get offended, they were benefiting from your silence. A lot of people are exhausted not because the work is impossible, but because they're constantly performing fine. Fine in meetings, fine in emails, fine while carrying resentment. The moment you replace performance with clarity, some of that exhaustion lifts. Segment 6. Words. 587. Characters. 3,298. If playing it safe is riskier, what's the alternative? It's not recklessness, it's trust. The people who last are often the ones who can tell the truth calmly. The first few times I used that language, I worried people would see me as difficult. Instead, most people treated it as normal because it is normal. What was abnormal was my old habit of absorbing everything. When you stop absorbing, you don't become less helpful. You become more reliable because you're operating inside reality instead of pretending you can stretch forever. I worked with a woman who had that skill. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't dominate meetings. But when she spoke, the room settled because she brought facts and trade-offs instead of emotion. One afternoon, a senior leader proposed a deadline that would have required nights and weekends for a month. You could feel the team preparing to sacrifice quietly. Nobody wanted to be the person who said no. She raised her hand and said, "If we commit to that date, quality drops. We can hit it, but we'll pay for it later. Here are two options that protect the outcome. No apology, no edge, just reality." The leader pushed back. She didn't argue. She repeated the consequences, offered choices, and stayed steady. The deadline moved. Later she told me, "I don't fight, I clarify." That sentence stayed with me because it gave me a different model of strength. That shift, clarify instead of comply, changes your whole posture at work. You stop assuming every request is a command. You start making trade-offs visible. People trust you more, not less. I started practicing with low-stakes moments. In smaller meetings, I'd say, "I'm concerned about this because," and then name a concrete risk. I learned to bring a suggestion with the concern so it didn't sound like complaining. I also stopped waiting for annual reviews to talk about my work. Once a month, I'd send my manager a short note, what I shipped, what I improved, what I was focusing on next. 2 minutes to write. It changed how I was seen. And when someone asked for something unreasonable, I learned to say, "I can do that, but it means this other thing will slip." Which is the priority? That turns a demand into a decision without drama. Real career safety comes from being trusted, visible, and prepared, not from being quiet enough to disappear. I had to learn that visibility can be quiet. A short summary after a project, a note that captures what changed, a simple sentence in a meeting that connects effort to outcome. You don't need charisma, you need consistency. And once you practice it, the fear fades. Not because work becomes safe, but because you become steadier inside it. You stop treating every request like a test. You start treating it like a negotiation between reality and priorities. I also learned to stop hiding behind being busy. Busy is easy to prove. Value is harder. So I began asking myself at the end of a week, what changed because I was here? If I couldn't answer, I didn't panic. I adjusted. That question made my work sharper. It made my conversations with managers cleaner. It made my choices less reactive. And it did something else. It gave me a quiet sense of control. Not control over the company, but control over my own posture inside it. When you're younger, safe feels like stability, a steady paycheck, a familiar role, a routine you can predict. In midlife, you start seeing safety differently. You start wanting resilience. A lot of people think resilience means having a backup plan on paper. It's deeper than that. It's the felt knowledge that you can learn, adapt, and recover. That knowledge comes from evidence, moments where you stretched, stumbled a little, and still handled it. The more evidence you build, the less you need to cling to one job as your only safety. Resilience means you could lose the job and still be okay. Not comfortable, maybe, but capable. You could pivot. You could learn. You could land. Playing it safe doesn't build that. It builds dependence. A friend of mine stayed in one role for 15 years. He didn't cause problems. He didn't chase stretch assignments. He didn't network outside his department because it felt unnecessary. He called it loyalty. He called it being sensible. Then his company was acquired. Overnight, the culture changed. New tools, new language, new expectations. He felt like he was starting over in his own chair. When he applied elsewhere, he realized his experience looked narrow. He had been busy, but he hadn't been building range. He told me, "I thought I was safe." What he meant was, I thought the world would stay still. It won't. I learned a similar lesson from a layoff that happened to someone I respected. She had been at the company longer than me. Smart, steady, kind. When she left, she didn't crumble because she had range. She freelanced for a while. She took a contract. She landed somewhere better. She told me, the only real security is knowing you can rebuild. That's the mindset playing it safe often prevents. If you never stretch, you never gather evidence that you can adapt. So when change arrives, it feels like a threat to your identity, not just a shift in employment. Resilience is built in small experiments, a new tool, a new responsibility, a conversation you avoid, a relationship outside your department, a skill you practice in public. It's also built by updating your own narrative. Instead of saying, "I do my job," you learn to say, "I improve systems," or "I reduce errors," or "I help teams ship faster." Those are portable sentences. They travel with you. The safest career is the one that can move, and movement requires that you stop treating stability as a substitute for strength, A resilient career is built the same way a resilient body is built, not with one big burst of effort, but with steady practice. You do one uncomfortable thing on purpose, then you recover, then you do it again. Over time, you stop panicking at pressure because you've proven to yourself that you can adapt. That's why I tell people to practice mobility while they still have stability. Volunteer for one project that stretches your skills. Learn one tool that makes you more flexible. Present one small improvement to your team. Build one relationship outside your department. Those are small moves, but they create options. Options are the real safety. The people who suffer most during sudden change aren't always the least talented. They are the people who built a life around one narrow identity. I'm the one who keeps things steady. When steadiness is no longer valued, they feel lost. Don't let your career become that narrow. If your work is solid, let it travel. Write it down. Teach it. Share it. Make it portable. There's a kind of peace that comes from knowing you're not trapped. Not the peace of everything going perfectly, but the peace of options. Options mean you can breathe in meetings. You can say no without panic. You can make a decision based on values instead of desperation. That's what I mean by resilience. It's not a personality trait. It's a set of small preparations that add up to freedom. Because the safest career isn't the one that never gets tested. It's the one that can survive the test without breaking your sense of who you are. If I could talk to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to be fearless. Fear will show up no matter what. I would tell him to stop worshiping comfort. Comfort is not the same thing as security. And if you're worried that speaking up will change how people see you, it will. Some will like you less, but the right people will trust you more. Trust is the real currency here. Trust that you'll tell the truth early while it's fixable. Trust that you'll protect outcomes. That kind of trust outlasts a reorg because it follows you, not the org chart. Comfort is staying quiet so nobody gets upset. Security is being known for work that matters. Comfort is hoping the system will treat you fairly. Security is having options if it doesn't. Playing it safe is risky because it makes you passive, and passive people are at the mercy of whatever happens around them. Budgets, politics, leadership changes, reorganizations. Those forces arrive whether you're ready or not. But if you've built a reputation for clarity, impact, and steady truth, you're harder to overlook. If you've built skills and relationships beyond one role, you're harder to trap. None of this requires you to become aggressive. It requires you to stop shrinking. Let your work have a name. Let your contributions be visible. Ask for what you've earned without turning it into a confession. Say the sentence you've been editing down for months, calmly, once, and ask yourself the honest question, regularly, am I choosing this, or am I hiding? Hiding feels safe until the day it isn't. Quiet success isn't a career with zero risk. It's a career where you take the right risks on purpose, so you don't end up forced into bigger risks later when time and energy cost more than they used to. Start small. Speak once in the meeting you usually endure. Document one win you typically downplay. Learn one thing that makes you more flexible. Those aren't dramatic moves. They're the daily work of becoming harder to erase. I know the fear behind safe because I lived it. Fear of looking foolish, fear of conflict, fear of being disliked, fear of losing what you've built. But here's the part worth remembering. You can lose what you've built even if you never take a risk. You can do everything correctly and still be made unnecessary by a new spreadsheet, a new leader, or a new strategy. So the question isn't whether you will face risk. You will. The question is whether you'll face it by choice in small, manageable pieces, or whether you'll face it all at once when someone else decides. Quiet success is built the way good health is built, with habits that look unremarkable from the outside, but change everything over time. You don't have to transform your personality. You just have to stop disappearing. Let your work have a name. Let your contributions be visible. Ask for what you've earned without turning it into a confession. Say the sentence you've been editing down for months, calmly, once, and keep a simple promise to yourself. I will not build my career on silence. Silence feels safe, but it does not protect you. It only makes you easier to move. Start small. Speak once in the meeting you usually endure. Document one win you typically downplay. Clarify one trade-off instead of absorbing it. Those aren't dramatic moves. They are the daily work of becoming harder to erase. And if you're thinking, I've been quiet for too long, you're not late. You're just aware. Awareness is the beginning of change. The goal isn't to turn into someone else. The goal is to stop living like your needs are an inconvenience. When you take up a reasonable amount of space, calmly, consistently, you become harder to erase, and you become easier to respect. And when the day comes that things shift, because they always do, you won't be relying on hope. You'll be relying on a record of impact, a practiced voice, and the quiet confidence that you can rebuild.